Hello, dear whiskey lover. It's Rosemary here in Orkney, and I'm really pleased that you've popped by this afternoon because I want to talk to you in particular, about one of the most iconic Orkney whiskies, which is the Highland Park 12-year-old. So just before Christmas, Highland Park rebranded and repackaged all their whiskies. And I was very lucky to taste them against a similar rebranding. Well, not, I suppose you can't really say that. Scapa, our other major whiskey distillery, at the same time brought out their first age statement range. And Marcus and we together present the BBC Radio Orkney Food and Drink and Craft programme. Marcus and I were very lucky to taste these whiskies with some other newbies from new distilleries here on the island for our Christmas radio programme, which was the most enormous fun to make and was called The 12 Whiskies of Christmas. And I mentioned that because we recorded it in a very warm radio studio. And where you drink your whiskey will affect how it presents to you and how you react to it. And it was certainly a very different atmosphere from here in my kitchen on a very cold day. So, what has the rebranding done? And indeed, is it just the packaging and the marketing? Well, for some years, Highland Park have been very much down the Viking tradition, Viking honour, etc., etc. And their box, you can see the black box just over my shoulder, has been heavily embossed. The whole the shop in the town has got this huge sort of mural, very like that, which is almost tattooed onto the shop, and their brand ambassadors were covered in tattoos, and they were kind of riding on the back of that fashion. The bottle was heavily embossed as well, and it had a pretty macho feel about it. I'm not a fan of tattoos. I don't have a tattoo, and certainly a box and bottle label that was redolent of tattoos was never going to attract me, although the spirit inside certainly did. So they have completely changed tack, and as you can see from the cream and white box, also on top of my barrel, they've gone for something that is far more feminine, very kind of neutral, and I believe the idea is to try and attract more women whiskey drinkers. And I know that a lot of you who watch me are men, and I know that a lot of you who watch me are women. So welcome one and all to the new branding for Highland Park. Now, when I first tasted the 12-year-old in that very hot and somewhat heady radio studio, I thought that it had changed, the spirit was different. And I thought it was veering more towards the old Scapa Skyron, now no longer available, but a very honeyed and sort of floral whiskey, which I found particularly good for food matching. And that is one of my great interests. So I've been doing this experiment with lots and lots of friends, and as you can see, my bottles are pretty nearly empty. But I want to tell you what I have found, and indeed what my friends who have carefully and thoughtfully undertaken this research on your behalf, dear viewer, what we have found. Is the spirit different between this really macho marketing and the softer and more gentle marketing? So these two glasses have got whiskey, which I poured at exactly the same time. I then went to hair and makeup, which is, I'm sure, blatantly obvious. And I just need to tell you about them. So this one is the Viking tradition 12-year-old, the old 12-year-old. And this is the new softer, let's say more feminine appeal. As not to say, do you remember the stink when Johnny Walker produced Jane Walker and how they were slated? I'm not saying that it is a feminine whiskey at this stage. Yes, of course, I've tried them before, but the old 12-year-old has a much more pronounced aroma. It's got really sort of seaweedy tang to it. I should also mention that I've been making marmalade in the kitchen, so there's that lovely aroma of marmalade oranges. But it's about 3 hours since the last boil, so it has abated a little. So seaweedy, salty, definitely coastal island tang to it, and little tiny hint of peatiness in the background. Highland Park's only about 10% peated, as I understand it. And the new spirit, because at this moment I am calling it the new spirit, is, I think, softer and more honeyed. And it hasn't got that peatiness in the back of it. Interesting, because the word on the block was it was the same. So this isn't a new whiskey to me. It has a certain amount of honeyed floralness to it and a lovely dance of spice right at the back of the sides of my tongue, and a hint of peat, just tiny little hint of peat in the mouth, but that is sitting on the tongue very much as the whiskey goes away. I was just thinking that didn't look too good, did it, for a lady of my years? So I'm just going to put that one down. So very attractive, very well balanced, a delicious whiskey. And as always on the second sip, much more joined together. The slight peatiness is balanced out into the fruitiness of it. The honey isn't so pronounced, but it is sweet. And as is oft quoted, it is a most beautifully balanced whiskey. A delight and a great entry into the old Highland Park stable. So, yeah, I still find that this is more subtle to nose. So this is from the new packaging. And this is what has confusticated me ever since I came out of that studio and started drinking this bottle at home. This is so fruity and honeyed up front and completely seductive. But then the peatedness is a much bigger wallop at the end. So yes, you have got that heather honey grassiness that I really do associate more with Scapa than Highland Park. And it's deeper and richer, and there's sort of creamy toffees in there as well. But then you have this much bigger wallop of smoky peatedness. And actually, having lived here for a number of years, this is our 8th winter, this is actually almost more suggestive of these beautiful islands than this one. But, as you know, dear viewer, who've been with me through thick and thin, the second sip always tells you something extra. Oh, and it's tons more stitched together. The peat is absorbed into the honeyed fruitiness, certainly in the mouth. It's only on the finish that it really comes and dances. This one doesn't have the spice that the old spirit had on the tongue. Be interesting to go back to this now. Yeah, definitely a bit more spicy. Definitely a bit more spicy. Now, what could affect that? The wood, the barrels it's actually in, the level of toast, I guess. Whether something has changed in that way. That's not my tummy rumbling, it's the fridge, if you can hear it at all. That one is much softer and honey toffee, but obviously sherry barrel. Little bit of sort of sultanas comes through as you drink it more and more. And then at this stage, the peatiness is balancing out, but it's still there, and it's a glorious and warming whiskey. So I have to tell you, I am certain that the spirit is different, but it could be from the wood, who knows. I also have to say that I've probably asked 4 or 5 friends to give me their opinion as to whether the spirit is different, and I haven't told them which is which, but each and every one has said that the spirit is different. I didn't ask them which they preferred. I'm going to tell you that, and this is just between you and I prefer the new one. So the change from the Viking livery and all that claptrap is, well, it's just a win-win from me. So this is the old bottle, and you can see all that embossedness. That must have cost a wee bit to do. So that is against this one. Bland or feminine? I don't know. You tell me. The big thing locally that people like is that it actually says on the back of the bottle, Kirkwall, 1798, which is when the distillery was established. I think, yes, that will stand out on a shelf. But it's the spirit inside that matters. Will that stand out as much? Now, I came home from Edinburgh the other day and, of course, walked through duty free. And for example, Glenmorangie have gone very, I would say, 70s and flower power in the colours of their packaging. Again, doesn't appeal to me at all. And so this, against that, would be an oasis of calm. But, you know, it all depends on what you want. And, of course, marketing, it's damned expensive. It takes an awful lot of money. And it does sway how we look at things. But at the end of the day, hackneyed. At the end of the day, I have to say that I think the new Highland Park is absolutely delicious. Look, I was never, ever anti the old one, but I'm not seduced by Viking honour and all the rest of that claptrap and the tattoos and butch and manliness. I am a woman who loves to drink whiskey. And I feel that the new packaging is giving you a bit of a blank page, perhaps, to form your own opinion about what you think about this fabulous spirit. And it is just a beautiful entry-level single malt whiskey. And as I say, to my mind, yes, we're here in Orkney, we have, well, many would say it's atrocious weather. We're an awfully long way north, and our weather reflects that. We have not freezing cold like in the Cairngorms, but we do have an awful lot of wind. And, it is a rough and rugged weather island, or weather islands, but it's soft and green and gentle. And somehow I think this new Highland Park 12 encapsulates all of that. And so, dear viewer, quite honestly, between you and me, bring it on. I love it. Highland Park 12 in its new livery. The best of the 12-year-olds from Orkney. Now, back to the marmalade. Bye.